energy left for our last meeting. So I can be very short in the introduction. It's me, I'm Jasper, I'm a front-end developer. I'm a partner here at the Voorhoede. We just do development, but I hope that tonight I can give a take on what I think that new technologies could bring for designers. So my talk is mainly about single-page apps, progressive web apps. Anyone heard about progressive web apps? Anyone made a progressive web app? Okay, good. And rethink front end. That's the. So I think it's hard to keep up with all the new web technology. If I, in a random week, look on can I use to check the support for some web technology, a whole bunch of new features have been added. I took this from another presentation I gave, basically on how we as front-end developers try to keep up. But I think on the other side, it also means that as designers, maybe we have to keep up, but maybe it also gives us new opportunities in our designs. So that's what I actually want to focus on tonight. The first part being single-page apps. So I guess everyone has been working with those and designing with those for a while now. There have been, these are just a few of the single-page app frameworks. And I think you don't have to know, mostly don't have to know the difference. I think the difference is mainly in developer convenience and how developers structure things. Most things don't touch design that much unless as a designer you're also coding, because then some frameworks may be a lot more accessible. The last few focus on producing web components. That's nice in itself because those can be used better standalone in other websites. So that means that from a designer you could make these fully encapsulated things, and if you have working for a brand that has a lot of different sites, create components that work throughout without being affected by the rest of the page. But other than that, I think that just it's mainly for single-page apps being different from the classic server-rendered pages. So if we compare those two, we worked on Finland.nl, and on the left, it's server-rendered. So when you open the page, you see this directly. And then if I want to do something, I scroll down, I select I only want the roof terraces, and then nothing happens. I have to scroll up, I have to say search basically. Then it goes to the server, it refreshes, and I get my results back. That's the classical model. Then on the right, we basically enhance it into a single page app. And then if I want to do the same thing, when I scroll down and I select something, it basically gets the results in the background and it updates them asynchronously. And as I was clicking the filter, you see that the old results dim out and it loads the other ones. So actually, we need different design patterns than we would with a statically rendered site. And I think that I'm mainly talking about all the different states of design. Vince Spillman has a nice article about the 9 states of design. None, one, some, too many. So that's basically like how do you structure the amount of data that you have. He focuses on form data being incorrect or correct for your input. But I mainly want to focus on the last one, which goes from having nothing to loading to being done. And I see that actually more as going from one state to transitioning into another state and what that allows us to do. And that we have to do something during that transition, during those states, is because people are impatient, basically. This is a research not specifically about use on the web, but in general, is that as long as something feels below 100 milliseconds, then it feels instantaneous. But if something takes up to a second, then it may still feel like an uninterrupted flow, so maybe going from one page to the next. If it takes longer, people get distracted. So we have to come up with ways to bring them back and focus on what they're doing. That's also a known problem in the real world. So people get bored in an elevator and it takes too long, so they put up mirrors so that people start looking in mirrors, and all of a sudden the lift ride takes less time, or it feels like in any case. So it's just perceived performance. We do a lot of tricks like that actually. On the airport in Houston, people got to the luggage belt too quickly, so they had to wait at the belt. So they made the route to the belt longer, and then they had to wait less time at the belt, but still took the exact amount of time. But it feels a lot faster, so it means that like we have to play with how people work and think. So we can do things in changing from one state to the other, and in a classical server rendered site, it's very quick from one to the other. There's not much of a transition, but and we still think in pages. And I think when we go to single page apps, we should actually drop that notion of pages. We might still have something like views or states, but those can even be nested, and they can morph into one another. So this could be a list page, and if I click on one of the items in the list, that list item can morph into a full detailed view, for instance. And I think that's a much different way in which we can design, and the reason that we can do this is because we have single page apps, but I think still the majority of the projects that are being done actually use the single page app framework, but still use the same design approach as when it would be server rendered. So this is an example of a project where we played with it in between state. It's a user interface where people check in their own luggage, and it starts by you having to scan your boarding pass. And the moment someone scans their boarding pass, we have to wait a bit until we know the airline you're flying with and your details, etc. And we don't know exactly how long that takes. So we actually fill it up the moment that you scan it. We show this little animation, and once we've got everything back, we morph to the next state. And it's basically just to keep you focused and occupied and make it feel smooth to go from one to the other while we have to do the work in the backend. There's a couple of approaches I'd like to show that are becoming more popular. Skeleton UIs, I think I don't know, maybe they go by different names. Have most people use these? So they're basically a nice way to replace, if I have a single page app, not the entire page needs to reload, but just that part, like the search results from Funda. And we can do better than showing a loader in the page in some cases. If we already know the structure that will become getting back, we could already put up a skeleton where the data will come. And as the data is driven in, we just place it where it should be. And we can take this further and actually play with that skeleton and start animating them. I was hoping to also show a project from a client, and then GDPR popped up, and it had personal things in there, so they're blank. But the idea is the same. Basically, we have contact cards where there would be someone's profile here with its information, and while it's loading, we already show the ID of a card. And this is from the designers at IMA agency. And what I like about that is that we came from developers that like it takes some time between this and where we actually want to go to. Can you come up with something? And another thing that we had was just plain old tabular data. And then we see the table, and I see table cells and the little TRs, TDs in code, and I see that we could give those different colors maybe, or that's the level of creativity that we have. And if we bring that back, then we actually got this where it's like, that's also a table, and it just flowing diagram starts out with, and then the data drops in, and then we'll translate it into your actual personal details, which I can't show, but that's what would normally happen. So I like this exchange between design and development that happens when we start thinking about those states in the middle. This is one that I didn't censor. It's all fake. So we're doing a start mail, and it's a web client is basically Gmail as a as a web app, and here we also put those skeleton UIs into practice. So it's your inbox, and once you start typing something, here we don't know how many results there are. Now we do, and we see there's 50 on the next page. We show 50 rows, and then there's just 13 left. So if you click again, I only show 13 little skeleton items. So we can also play with the amount of data that we do have and take that into consideration when we design these kind of things. Then there's two main things that I think deserve a bit of extra attention. It's image loading and fonts, especially if we say that they're single-page apps and we want to make things feel more appy, then these things can really break or spoil the experience because it feels like you're looking at a document. So, for instance, if I have images in the page and they slowly load, then they push down my content after this is loaded, and it becomes even worse if you follow one of those links to the next page and then go back where it's at 14, and then it jumps, and then you want to go back to the state exactly that it was before, and everything jumps around. Now, some browsers are starting to take care of this themselves. We can also do things about this as developers. So, for instance, this is basically what happens if we don't do anything. We have text above and below the image. As the image is loading, that text is there, and everything jumps down. But what we can do is actually place something there, like a placeholder, and make sure that everything stays the same. And we can make sure that these placeholders actually have a fixed ratio, so that also in a responsive design, if this becomes smaller, it will also become less high, and still match the exact image as long as you know the ratio of the image beforehand. So this is if we start out with it as developer, it's gray as a placeholder, but you can see that there are really nice things being done with this. So, for instance, if you're in Google Images and you're doing a search, they start out with the primary colors in that image, and once they find the image, they load them in. Or inside any random medium article, they have that placeholder, but they start with a very low inline resolution image, and then they blur that, and they blur it up the moment that the actual image arrives, and then it kind of feels a lot more snappier, and it's actually still the same thing. So we can design with these kind of things. And this was clearly from a designer that took that to the next level, who actually took images and vector traced those and just colored them in, and then you get, if you do the same thing, those images slowly load in. And in the beginning, this took some hand crafting, and someone came up with a development plugin that you can actually put images through there and you get the vectors back. They're not always as nice as this, but it's a very nice attempt. So those are things we can do with images. Similarly, we have issues with fonts. Font files are kind of big, and we only find out that you need custom fonts after your CSS has been downloaded, which doesn't start downloading until we find the style sheet in your HTML. So what basically happens is this, a flash of invisible text. So we have the style sheet, you see the rest of the page, but we don't have the font file yet. So you see nothing, and then you see text. And we can do things about that. So we can we can take a different font as a fallback and show that first. And the moment the custom font is loaded, we show that. I think it's maybe better as a user experience because at least you can start reading, but you can also see a flash of unstyled text, and then you see it being swapped out. So there's things that we can do about that, and that is matching our fallback font to our actual font. So this is Georgia as a fallback, and actually we want that to be not a serif. And we see that as they change, the text becomes longer, so that would actually push things down again, and it would do the same as image reflow. And there's tools online that basically help you play around and see with letter spacing and sizing what you can do to pretty much match them. It probably won't be perfect because it also has to work responsively. But if you do that and then swap them out, then basically these are different fonts, but everything stays in the same place. So I think as a designer, I understand that you come up with a custom font, but it would be very nice if you also think of a fallback system font and see how you can tweak that so that it closely matches the thing that you're actually want to achieve. So, and there's one more thing about states in single-page app, especially, is that as we no longer need to think about them as completely separate views, we can also load them in separately. So this is again start mail. If I add a contact, that's maybe that's more of a modal thing or whichever. I think another thing that we then have to make sure of is that it actually stays inside of our navigation, and that if I write a documentation for this as well, I need to be able to link to new contacts. So make sure that, I don't know if it's up to a developer or a designer to design a URL, but I think it's in any case part of the user experience that we make sure that the moment that we lose this classical model and go to single-page apps and have nested states, that we still make sure that things are addressable. And if, in any case, if developers don't do it as a designer, you can point it out. So maybe we can do it. So that's basically for the single-page app part. And for me, the main takeaway about it is that, like, if you work with a single-page app, make sure that you design the states, but also the things in between the states and how they transition. And the other part is progressive web apps. It's mainly just a buzzword. It started out as a marketing term, I think, from Google to make sure that the web is going to rival more with native apps. And to me, basically, progressive web apps are basically just websites, but with superpowers. And what I mean by that is that, in essence, a progressive web app is still a website. I stole this from Microsoft, this image. So any website is linkable normally, it's fresh, responsive, it's discoverable through a search engine. It should be safe because we're serving it over HTTPS and a bit more things than that maybe. But I think what makes progressive web apps, the promise of progressive web apps especially new, is that you can also install them to your home screen or your app tray, just like native apps, that they feel more app-like, that they can live on a fakey network or even work offline, and that they're re-engageable through things like push notifications. And those are actually things that we can already do in the browser today, and I don't think we're using them very often yet. So I'm out of time? No. So, yeah, we have two, so the other one is also going to be probably. Anyway, so this is one in action. So this is actually our own site. It starts out like a regular website. You go to the URL, and once you visit it, it prompts you to also install it as an app in your home screen. And if you do, you get this little icon, and if you click it, then you first get a splash screen, but after that it opens, and in this case, it opens standalone. So I don't even have a URL bar anymore, but it's still actually just a website or a web app or whichever, but it's a progressive. And after people close our site or the browser, we can still get them back, for instance, through sending push notifications, and then by that, re-engaging them to come back to our site. So I'll show you a bit on how this is being achieved. Yeah, so first, basically, to take out the buzzword, I guess the progressive web app is just a matter of using those latest web technologies to create a great experience. And I don't think a user cares much what we use to do it, whether it's native tech or web. But if it's a progressive web app, it's web technologies. And with those web technologies, I basically mean all of this. There's this website, what web can do today. I don't know if anyone ever visited it. It's very nice depending on the device that you visited with. You see all the features that are being supported that basically make your website and can make it feel more happy. So there's a lot of things we can do straight from the browser. We can access your battery status, we can make it vibrate, we can connect to USB things, we can control a website with a gamepad if we want. All things that make a site more happy. But the core of the progressive web app is mainly here at the top, which is it's installable, it works offline, and it's able to send push notifications. And I think that's what most people, an indication really on what a progressive web app is, and the rest is maybe in a bit more of a gray area. So, if we look at those in practice, in 2017, here we made it our objective to turn every project that we touch into a progressive web app, whether the client knew about it or not, but it gave us a chance to just dive in, because otherwise we would first have to explain what it was, and you have to give this talk every time, or just try it out, and if it works, you can. So, again, it just starts as a regular website, and with the difference being that, like this regular website and a regular the server rendered page, basically, what you open in the browser requests a page on the server, you get that back, and the browser shows that. Now, what's especially different from progressive web apps is that after that, the page registered something that's called a service worker. That is basically a little server inside of your browser that sits in between the browser and the server, which means that we, all of a sudden, as front-end developers, get full control over how a web page accesses the network. And if you have such a service worker in, and you have a file, a manifest that declares the name of your app, the color, what the splash screen should look like, and it's being served over HTTPS, that's often enough for most browsers now to say, okay, this is a progressive web app. I'll prompt you to install it. So this is again added to home screen, and if I click it, I get a splash screen because we want it to be native-like, and native apps have splash screens. I think if we make them fast enough, you should just be able to skip the whole splash screen and just go to the app. Okay, it's in there. And from there, this is actually what happens, what we do on the background. So we want to make it work offline. So what we do is every page that you visit, the service worker still gets the page from the server, but before it hands it back to the browser to show us the page, we save, copy in the cache, and then the next time that you visit that page, we try and find if we have it in the cache, and we serve that back. And we no longer even need to go to the server. That makes the user experience a lot faster, but it also means that we're no longer dependent on the network in that case, and we can make web apps that are all of a sudden fully offline. So where before we used to have a little dinosaur, if we were offline, we killed that one, but we got back an offline working page. And in case of our website, we cache everything that you visited. So you can go back to the pages that you visited, and if you're out of luck, you can't connect to the server for any reason, you get a fallback page where at least we show our contact details so that we don't miss the clients, and we have a little list of the pages that you can still visit. I think these are the things that you can see that it's developer things, so we end up with just URLs that you visited. We changed that, but now it's still. But so this introduces the technology is there, but we need to design with it.
So you already show pages that are available offline, right? So but let's say there's an interactive part of a page where I fill out before, then I send it, then can I still get the broken stuff, or does it work also sending it to the servers working, not letting the user know? It's not being used through the internet. But
I'll show you that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's a good question. So we're also playing with the fact, I think users don't expect that web pages work offline. So one of the things that we do is in the overview of our blog post, we show a little icon once you've visited it that has a tooltip saying this is offline available. You see that some new progressive web apps, after they've loaded certain things for you, you get this little toast message saying you have this offline available, etc. Maybe we need that for the moment to let our users know that a website can be an offline thing, and probably at some point we're taking those out again, because then the main expectation is just that websites work offline just as well. We're not telling users that a website is responsive anymore. So, I hope we'll get there. But we also see that with this caching strategy and making sure that everything is very fast, that we introduce new problems. So, for instance, if you go to our homepage and you see the next upcoming event, our next meetup, and we load that page from the cache, and then we go to the server and we actually find out we have a new version. And if that's the case, we send a little message from that service server to the page, and the page shows this, hey, I have a new version, do you want to update? So basically, all I need to do is click that button and we refresh. And here we made sure that we don't show that button yet until after we got the new version from the server and we cache that. So if you click on it, at least the reload will be instant. But I think it depends on how often your content changes, where such a strategy is possible. And you don't have to reuse the same thing on every page. And for most pages, this works fine. A blog post doesn't really change ever, and but the homepage and other things do. So yeah, we still really have to figure out what kind of design patterns work for what situation. And so the other big thing I think we can do with progressive web apps and from a service worker is receive pushes from a server and then show a notification to the user. Problem is though that it's something we have to ask permission for through a native prompt. And what you see often is now, Facebook did that in the beginning as well. And if I go to Product Hunt and I've never visited at all, then I get this notification prompt directly without ever being able to interact with the website beforehand. I think everyone clicks on block, it's hard to get back. So there also we're looking for design patterns. For instance, at the end of our blog, we ask people if they want to get notifications, and if they press that button here in the page, then we know that in any case they have that intent. So then we're confident to show the native prompt, and we hope people then click allow because it's very hard otherwise to get them back. And if they do, that means that even after they close the browser, we can actually get them back and send push notifications to them. And that's something that works. We're mostly showing this on mobile because it's similar to native apps, but it's something that works already and just as well all these things on in desktop browsers. But I think this is the simple part, showing a notification, the actual, sorry, I took that out. There's a lot of logic going on behind the screens, like when should I show a notification? So if I'm in WhatsApp and I'm directly chatting with someone, I don't expect every single word that I send to also be a push notification because that would just be spam. So also on websites we have to check, are you actually on the page, what's going on, etc. So I think there's just this little new technology that's being introduced to us, requires a lot of new design patterns that we have to implement. So there's two other projects that we like to show that we turned into a progressive web app. So one was that mail client, and we see that it's nice because we can go around the App Store, but there's also difficult things that we have to do, like encrypt private data. I think it's too much to go into now. I'll show you the other one because that's something I think Chris asked about. This is something we made for elevator inspectors. And basically, they're the perfect candidate, I think, for a progressive web app because they have conditions of being entirely offline in an elevator shaft. So how they work is before they leave home, basically, they open the page and it loads all the inspections they have to do that day. And all the forms that they have to fill out are available on the device. And if they get there, they can fill out that form. They submit it, even though they have no internet access at all. And in the background, we queue those requests. And you can, again, close the browser. And then, mostly at night, because they want to save on battery, they're back on Wi-Fi. And then we get a sync event. And then we clean out that entire queue and sync everything up to the server. So that's something that's called background sync, and it works in Chrome. And for here, it was enough, and other browsers still have to implement it. But I think you can also see it as an enhancement for browsers that do, like, one that you fill out a form, you can say, like, don't worry, your data is saved.
So, top of this, so let's say the data that you want to push changed on your server, so your server wants to push you a change that you want to push to the server. What do you get?
Issues.
Yeah.
I think those are basically, yeah, synchronization issues between data sources is always an issue. That was for native apps, that also, but that's also if you're online and you're doing live editing of a document in Paper or Google Docs, they need the same resolution. It's maybe simpler because it's more atomic. But yeah, you have the same thing. So probably here, the server sees that there's a mismatch, and if it can't resolve it directly, it will have to show the user in some way, like this also change, pick it. But that's up to the designer, I think, also, and then the developers.
Yeah. So versioning.
So I do have to mention that, like, most things are green in Chrome and most browsers at the moment, but it's harder for our iOS users. So if I open the same thing, it's a lot of red crosses at the moment that were all green in Chrome. But luckily that's something that's changing quickly. And actually, the new version of iOS, so 11.3 of Safari, I think it's already out, but most people, I guess, don't have it yet. But it actually supports the first version of service workers. It's kind of flaky, and it has a bit of issues still, but I think those will all be cleared up before the end of the year. So we just start making more progressive web apps right now and use it as an enhancement of our existing sites. Then it works in all the other browsers, and then if Safari catches up, then it just upgrade overnight all of our websites to apps. So I think that's just going to happen. And Firefox and Chrome are there, and Edge is also almost there, so that means all Windows users also. So my takeaway for this part would actually be, like, just start small with progressive web apps. It's not something that you have to build from scratch as a greenfield project. You can introduce it to existing sites and just enhance it with some progressive web app features. So last thing is, I think that we can do more actually to make our apps feel more, our websites feel more appy, if that becomes the expectation. Because if I open something from a browser, maybe I expect it to be a website, but if I install it in my home screen and it opens full screen, then maybe I have different expectations about that. This is what makes native apps appy. You have to go to the Play Store. You don't have to do that for progressive web apps, but Windows Store, I think the real native apps never caught on. They are going to use Bing to index all the progressive web apps online and make sure that those are also available in the store. And I think, so for desktop, that's actually a very large group of people. That means that it will even work on your exports. We were doing kind of things wrong in the beginning with when the context changes. So we did the Trouw.nl, we turned that into a progressive web app. If you go to an article on Trouw.nl in a browser and you get a cookie wall, that's not very nice, but it's maybe accessible. You make sure that as a progressive web app, this was also available through the Play Store. If you then install the app, you open it, you open a native app or something, and it opens a cookie wall, that becomes kind of weird, and you click through it and you scroll all the way down and you get this very fat footer, which you probably normally don't have in a native app with app banners in the bottom. So there's a lot of things that we still, like, you can reuse it, but maybe depending on whether someone visits it from a browser or opens it from an app tray or a home screen, I guess users have different expectations, and we have to figure out how to deal with that. This is the push notification part that actually showed, like, this is often still the standard block, so I think there's nicer things that we can do. and that was the screen from Slack. This is how they make the decision whether you get a push notification or not. So behind the screen, there's a lot of logic going on. I don't know if this is an interaction designer work or a bit of development or a bit of fun. It's challenging, maybe. So there's also simpler things that we can do to make things feel more happy. For instance, not just using custom fonts, but also using system fonts that are picked based on the platform that you're on. That makes your app feel more, or your site feel more like the platform it's being opened on. We're big fans of creating a different date picker for every project and building those. 20 points. There's always, but if you use a native input, date inputs and other inputs in your site, then once it becomes an app, it actually makes more sense because you get the same as what you put in a native app. You can do more, making things more happy in touch. We can integrate with other APIs that the browsers often offer. So for instance, on our blog, if you want to share it, you have just links to the Facebook website, Twitter website, etc. If we detect that your browser supports this native app tray, we replace all of those with a share button. And if you click on that one, it actually opens the native tray. You can share it with WhatsApp or whichever. We don't have to hack the breakpoint and think that then you're on a mobile phone and show a WhatsApp icon. That's always kind of difficult. So I think this is better, and these are ways in which we can better integrate with the device and make things more happy. There's two more, which I think are big features that integrate well. So the first one is for payments. There's a web payment API which you can use. It's basically like Apple Pay, if you know that, and it means that from a website, we just have to say there's a button and I want to order this for this price, and the device basically takes over, and whichever wallet or anything you have connected takes care of the rest. And you shouldn't replace your entire existing payment flow, but maybe you can offer this as an enhancement for the people that actually have it. It's well supported already in browsers, but there's no, it depends on your payment provider, and there's no ideal connection yet. So I think if you're just doing this for the Netherlands, it doesn't have much use, but maybe if you're working on a project, webshop something for something outside of the Netherlands, then this is a nice thing to look into. And there's also even things we can do from a browser, is connect with other devices over Bluetooth. So from the browser, get the same native prompt to select the device, and for instance, I can see a hard monitor working that's being connected inside of my browser. I have a little drone at home which I can just connect from the website, and then I can just control it until I refresh it, and it works very well. Yeah, so those are basically the things, like all kind of new features that are coming to the web. Some are under the umbrella progressive web apps, some maybe aren't, but in any case, I think there are technologies that we can use, but we still definitely need better design patterns around them. So with that, I'd like to round up. So basically, if anything, I hope that you remember these things, that if you have the technology to make something feel like an app, make sure that you design all the states and everything in between. But don't expect all the technologies to be available in every browser, on every platform. So do try to use them as an enhancement and layer your designs. And in any case, don't leave them as an afterthought, but start with them and make them part of your design. So with that, yeah, sorry, yeah, that was a little bit advertising. If you click through very rapidly, then subliminal is that. So, but I already put it in the other one. So sorry. Hey, we have a masterclass. So thank you.
Nice.
Are there any questions left?
Is this presentation going to be available online as well?
Yes, I'll
Cool.
share it in the group.
Nice.
Is your presentation going to be online?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's going to be online. I'll share the link because it's an online presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. If there's, I don't know, I think that you might all be a bit tired as well. So I would like to thank you all also very much for attending. We don't have a next meetup scheduled yet. But I mean, we'll share it on meetup. But if there's something you would like to present or think that there's a topic that might be interesting, please do find us because we'd love to have you give a talk. So thank you.